Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom, and this is my podcast. Join me as I delve into the world of games and gaming, and especially old school RPGs. Together, let's voyage into the astral realm and check out my Phantom Thoughts. On this episode, we have a call from Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. We have bundles and blogs, and then, of course, more Tales of the Dragon Slayers. So let's get going.
Hey, this is Jason. Just want to say BJ's call wasn't in the version I downloaded, so I missed that. Can't comment on that. And then as far as post-apocalyptic, well, without getting pedantic about it, and arguing about the definition of post-apocalyptic, I think it's just going to depend on the world the GM wants to present. Because, where do artifacts come from? And when you have lost civilizations and you have ancient technologies that are, lost, but you come across these advanced technologies and things like that, there's some good documentation online that do define why some people believe it is a post-apocalyptic. Again, I think it really, though, comes down to what your definition of post-apocalyptic is. What point after the cataclysm is it not post-apocalyptic anymore? That's the question. Does post-apocalyptic have to be 1 or 2 generations after the apocalypse? 10 generations after the apocalypse, is that still the apocalypse? Is it once civilization's rebuilt, have we exited post-apocalypse at that point? I think so. So there's a good argument it's not post-apocalyptic just because we have civilizations restarted and keep going, and people aren't actively thinking about the apocalypse, right? Look at Conan. Look at Robert E. Howard. That's definitely a world that's had cataclysms and apocalypses in the past. And there'll be one in the future as well to end the Hyperborean age. But during that age, they have their civilizations that have lasted for thousands of years and all this. So is it post-apocalyptic? Well, Atlantis sunk and Lemuria sunk, and there were these big cataclysms, and mankind was thrown back to basically being primitive ape men and had to crawl their way back. So, yeah, but we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of years after that, and civilizations were rebuilt. So is it still in that post-apocalyptic stage? Probably not. Even though there are times you're going to reference Atlantis, which was pre-apocalypse. So D&D is kind of like that. It's like the Hyperborean age. And whether you consider that post-apocalyptic or not, I think it's just kind of pedantic, and whether it's not pedantic. It's how far from the event do you have to be, how many generations, or what separates you, and is that the creation of new civilizations and new civilizations working, the world.
Thank you for the feedback, Jason. The part about BJ's call was actually left over from the previous podcast I had in putting the clips together. I'd left that clip in there, so that's what that was. So if anyone else was confused, there was not supposed to be a call from BJ in the previous podcast to this one. It was 2 podcasts ago. As of this one, that would have been 182. So this is 184. That was 183. So I just left that part in there. So there wasn't supposed to be a call for BJ. Your point is well served for the difference between post-apocalypse and not post-apocalypse. Certainly time at some point intervenes and you're no longer post-apocalypse, you're post-apocalypse. In fact, I think I remember seeing a couple of RPGs described as post-apocalypse, where the apocalypse was way in the past. I think to me the difference is that a post-apocalypse world is the people who are doing the exploring were part of the area of the world or what have you where the apocalypse happened. So when you see post-apocalypse TV shows, post-apocalypse books, they're living in the ruins of the civilization that either they or their kind of immediate ancestors lived in. Whereas what I'm viewing the old school D&D, particularly as in the AD&D era of being, is groups of people who are exploring a new area to their peoples. So they're exploring an area that their particular town, village, country, culture, kingdom, empire, what have you, never occupied. Or if they occupied, it was long ago, and it was even frontier even then. So the things they are discovering are new discoveries to them. And if there is a fallen empire, there's ruins, there's what have you throughout that area. Those are ruins of something else. So for the people that lived through that, it would be a post-apocalyptic landscape, I suppose. The locals, if you will. But it could also just be people had moved on. It's a situation where people were migratory, or there was, they just picked up and left because they no longer liked the area for some reason or another. It could be because of their neighbors. It could be because of, climate. It could be because of uh, monsters just kept coming, and they had established settlements there, and the monsters just kept coming and coming, and it wasn't worth staying. So it wasn't that everything was destroyed. It wasn't that everything crumbled. It was simply that this was an area of the world that they didn't feel was hospitable to them, so they went back to another area. But their civilization still survived, and they most of the people still survived. It was a case where everything was wiped out, which is what an apocalypse is to me. It's not just that things get tough and you move on. It's that there's some kind of immediate disaster, or it could be a slow motion disaster as well, but it's usually something that you can't avoid. You can't get away from it. You can't move to avoid it. You can't mitigate it. It's coming, and it's going to destroy everything in its path, whether that's materials or sustenance or actual people. I liken it to, say, Germany, what Germany was to Rome, where Germany was always the frontier, and when they tried to conquer that frontier, they suffered setbacks, and it wasn't worth them to continue trying to move into that frontier, to move into that area, and to subjugate it. And so the Germanic peoples moving back into the areas that the Romans did occupy after they left, they would find, abandoned villages, abandoned towns, or towns that were formerly occupied by Romans, and then the Romans left, and all that was left was any locals that were occupying that area with them. So I view frontier with previous occupancy as different from post-apocalypse. I guess that's my long-winded way of saying that. But I really appreciate your view of the nuance and how far time-wise you get from apocalypse when it's not post-apocalyptic anymore. And I guess my answer to that would be when you've reached a level of settlement and a level of sophistication that is roughly equivalent to whatever was there before the apocalypse, that would be when you reach that point. And it could be that you don't reach the same levels of population because the resources aren't there anymore. The civilization from before used up most of the resources. Maybe that was the apocalypse. Maybe the apocalypse destroyed the resources. But you get to the point where you've reached what those lands can sustain. And now it's not post-apocalyptic anymore. You've just reached the limits of what can be achieved there. So that would be my answer to that question. And that could take a generation. It could take 10 generations. Or it can never happen. It could be post-apocalyptic forever. But again, that's very thought-provoking. And thank you for giving me that feedback. Well, speaking of post-apocalypse, one of the blogs I've been reading through, and these blog posts at this blog are not extremely current. They're from years back. But it's the Hill Canton's blog. And what I was looking through for it was he had a series of posts talking about AD&D domain play, which is something I'm very interested in. And one of the first posts listed, and this is back from 2012, is AD&D's Apocalypse and Hereafter. And he starts it off saying, "I've circled around the margins of theme before, as have a few others, but there's a heady whiff of apocalypse in old school D&D. Is seen not just in the rather obvious stock elements, the countless ruins, the lost artifacts, the former sprawl of civilization lost to the wilds, but hard-coded throughout the rules proper whenever broad human society is involved." And he makes some arguments for why he believes that, and some of it has to do with the ratio of really strong patrols you run across in civilized areas, and that would only be necessary in a post-apocalyptic society, and things like that. So that was very interesting. I thought tied in well with what Jason had to say about is D&D, old D&D, a post-apocalyptic based RPG. Another blog post that got my attention is a more recent one from the Elf Maids and Octopi blog. In this, the author is talking about, gives a brief summary of some of their various settings that they've used for their RPGs over the years and how they're going through them. And in this particular post, they're giving just sort of a brief summary of what they are, and then a D12 table of rumors that would exist in that particular setting of world. I found it very interesting because I always find it interesting when people talk about their different settings and how they've set them up and what the feel of them is and kind of what area they're set in. Are they Stone Age? Are they Bronze Age? Are they post apocalypse? Are they high magic? That kind of thing. So I found that real interesting for that part. Another one is Dyson's Dodecahedron. You probably know him for his maps, and this is for a map called the Fractured Prism. I thought it was very evocative for what it was, and that's something to definitely go check out. You're better off going there and reading it than for me to just try to describe it, because I would basically just be reading from it anyway. But that's one. I always like Dyson stuff, but this is one that really, I kind of zoned in on. Said, "Oh, that's really cool." Where it's what it says on the tin. It's a fractured prism that's also an adventuring site, and that the fact that it is a fractured prism has various effects on what happens within this small dungeon setting. And so then the last blog I want to touch on is the Other Side blog. The post that really caught my attention was This Old Dragon, The Best of Dragon Volume 1, and basically just goes through a particular, the contents of This Old Dragon. And, usually you see somebody go through something like an old module or old magazine or what have you, and you say, well, that's interesting. But this is one of those that actually made me say, I might want to get my hands on that. So that doesn't happen often, although you wouldn't know that from my drive-through RPG library. But it doesn't really happen that often that I see something and say, oh, how can I acquire this thing? And of course, this being the first volume of The Best of Dragon, there are a lot of articles in here from Gary Gygax. So you see that name on a lot of them. And you see articles on things like building a dungeon, building a hex crawl, magic research rules, just things that are really more or less basic to old school games or how we think of old school games. So that was exciting. He's had a couple. That was actually the 17th of September was that one, and he's actually had, or the 18th, and that was actually had a couple of posts since then. One about the Pendragon RPG, and another one talking about a bit with that involved the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. So lots of good material there on the Other Side blog. And of course, there'll be links to all of these things in the show notes. Now, on the bundle front, the only thing new really was at Humble Bundle. They have a Warhammer RPG starter bundle, which includes materials both for Age of Sigmar, which is their current setting for their fantasy, both the war game and their RPG, obviously, and then also the 40K. So you have material for both. And I have not played Warhammer, either the war game or the RPG, but I've always found the lore very interesting, particularly the 40K version. And boy, you talk about your uh, nihilism in a setting. There's your nihilism right there for Warhammer 40K. The other bundle on Humble Bundle is from Goodman Games. It's X-Crawl Classics, the role playing game, and this is a game that's never really appealed to me because it's about a reality show broadcast on spell phones. So you're putting reality TV show programming and smartphones into a fantasy RPG, and that just doesn't. I'm not a big make your fantasy RPG be as much like the real world as possible. I mean, unless you're setting it in the real world, if it's some kind of more modern urban type fantasy, and you're setting it in the real world, okay. But this is kind of DCC adjacent RPG here, so and that's the kind of thing I've never liked, where they equate gold pieces with bucks, and they create magic cell phones and magic cars, and it's just the modern world, but you're saying this is magic instead of technology, and I don't like that. But that being said, this bundle is out there if that's something that would appeal to you, and there may be a way you can adapt a lot of the adventures that are included into a more traditional, for lack of a better word. I know trad has its own meaning in RPGs for some people that I don't really. Well, I guess I understand it, but I don't really care. It's a way of segmenting the way people play RPGs. But you could probably, if you play more standard, let's say, version of D&D or D&D adjacent, then maybe you could mine this for some ideas or some creatures or some magic items or something like that. And there is included in this a PDF of Dungeon Crawl Classics, the core book. So if for some reason you don't have Dungeon Crawl Classics and you would like to have that, then you could buy this bundle and get it and get a bunch of other stuff. I believe you have to, they have different bundles, obviously, and different levels of bundle, and you have to buy probably one of the top two to get the Dungeon Crawl Classics book. And as with, I think, the last Humble bundle I talked about that was from Goodman Games, the top tier bundle also includes physical item, X-Crawl Classics Adventure Assortment. So I guess that's their version of modules for this game system, and you get a physical copy, and it looks like four items. At least the picture has 4 items on it. It doesn't say in the description if it has 4 items in it, but it's, and of course shipping is extra, and they don't know what shipping is going to be until you order it. So you have that. So it's a not very cheap way to get the PDF of DCC core rulebook. But if you're interested in the X-Crawl Classics RPG, if it's something you enjoy, there's probably a lot of material here for you. And you get 40 plus items, and the top tier is like $40. And if you don't want the physical item, the next tier down that is only missing the physical item is $30. So 40 something items for $30. It's a pretty good deal if it's something you think that you'll use one way or another. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And now, more from my solo AD&D RPG campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers. All right, a little housekeeping before I get started. I think the last delve, I labeled that as delve number 15 on day 121, and that was actually delve 16 on day 122. Somehow in my numbering reference, I forgot. So this delve, which is the next day, is the party, and their 17th delve into the dungeon. It'll be their second one into the second level. and it's day 123 since the dragon first crashed into this area of the realm and brought the dragon slayers' attention here. So let's get to it. The party returns to the second level looking for the remaining dwarves. The dwarven clerics had healed them to assist them in their quest of recovering their brother dwarves. Vegmar, an undersized dwarf clad in magical plate mail and shield, with a magical battle axe, joins them on the front rank with Sir Gus and Bernie. Spear welders Harl and Michael flank Katya on the middle rank, with Prier, Edgar, and Quinn at the back. At the first intersection past the stairs, they continue north rather than turning back west. After 30 feet, the corridor ends with a door to the east. The party listens and checks for traps before Gus forces the door. They enter a 40-foot by 40-foot room. In the north 10 feet, past the end of the corridor, the stream they ran across previously flows across the room. There's another door in the southeast corner on the south side. As the party searches the room, the far door opens and a group of 20 dwarves with a fifth-level fighter leading them enter the room. The groups are both surprised, but the sight of Vegmar quickly brings smiles to the faces of the dwarves' leader. After a brief union, this group is escorted back to the first level while the party moves on. The party goes through the door in the hall, goes south 30 feet before turning west, and continues another 30 feet before ending in a door. There's a brief rechecking of the map, leading the party to realize the door is either fake or a one-way door just north of the stairs. Just as Gus opens the door, after Bernie's checks, the party is surprised by a secret door opening behind them, and another group of dwarves emerges, another 20 dwarves led by a fourth-level fighter. Again, there is a joyous reunion, and then the dwarves pass through the one-way door. So, a good luck on some wandering monster rolls there. The party makes its way through the secret door into a roughly 40-foot east-west by 60-foot cave with a lone door at the south end across from the secret door. And that door opens to reveal a group of bandits, 20 along with their 9th-level fighter leader and 5 second-level fighters as guards. The party gains surprise, and Katya attempts to work her charisma magic. Initial reaction is negative, 41% roll, modified roll, leading to a 55% mostly negative reaction, which leads to obvious aggression with a 42% roll on the following roll. The party wins initiative 2-1, and the front line splits. Gus pulls Vegmar with him to give Katya room for a psionic blast. 4 bandits fall, 3 asleep, 1 in a coma, 8 drop their weapons stunned, and 2 stand unknowingly confused. 2 of the guards stand feeble-minded, and 1 flees out the door. Gus and Vegmar confront the bandit leader. They will need 20s to hit. The leader will need a 20 to hit Gus and a 19 for Vegmar. Prier and Michael attack the 2 active guards. Both they and the guards need 20s to hit. Harl, Quinn, Edgar, and Bernie each confront a bandit, and they need 11 for Edgar or 12 to hit. The bandits need 20s. 1 bandit stands unconfronted as Katya has already acted. Gus's longsword strike bangs off the leader's shield, but Vegmar's battle axe bites for 5 points of damage. Prier and Michael both start with misses. Harl misses, but Quinn, Edgar, and Bernie each kill a bandit. The bandit facing Harl and the guards miss as well, but the bandit leader connects against Vegmar for 4 points. The extra bandit charges Katya and inflicts 3 points of damage. The bandits win initiative 2-1. All the bandits miss. Katya and Harl each fell the remaining regular bandits. Bernie backs up Michael, and they kill 1 guard. Edgar and Quinn join Prier and succeed in banging away at the remaining guard's armor. Gus and Vegmar do the same versus the leader. Then the party wins initiative 3-2. Quinn misses, but Prier and Edgar finish off the last guard. The others join Gus and Vegmar, with Quinn and Katya combining to inflict 16 points of damage, and additionally, Quinn's weapon severs the leader's head. He's using it as the longsword edge as a sword of sharpness. Random roll for the extremity hit. The party gets their accompanying men-at-arms to secure the other bandits, including the runner who returned and surrendered at seeing the carnage, and begin taking them to be held and eventually taking out the keep. After arrest, the party discovers 6 arrows in a crevice in the cave floor. The party takes every precaution before Gus forces the door to the south. It opens into a circular room 60 feet in diameter with another exit to the east. In the middle is a pool of water roughly 20 feet apart across. The pool radiates magic, and Katya carefully gathers a sample. After searching the rest of the room, the party again tests and listens to the door to the east, and Gus easily opens it. A corridor heads east for 70 feet and ends with a secret door. Checking their map, the party realizes it opens into a previously seen north-south hall. They rest before entering. The party then travels north, through the room with the scythe trap and the room where they fought the troglodytes. They choose to explore a previously bypassed hall north. After 30 feet, they enter a 20 by 20 foot chamber through the southwest corner. There is an exit along the east wall in the northeast corner. They also encounter rolls, new monster, level 4 monster. At this point, I pondered what the party would know about rust monsters. And I realized that dwarves would have encountered these creatures due to the nature of what they do. And they are, in a way, natural enemies. So maybe not quite so unlucky that Sven died and Vegmar joined the group on this occasion. Vegmar yells, "Run! They eat metal." The party wins initiative and runs. As the two rust monsters gain ground, the party realizes they won't outrun them. They drop some iron spikes and run back to the elevator room they had wedged with spikes to keep it up. They then watch from a distance as the monsters eat the spikes holding the elevator room up and it descends. And from behind them, they hear a noise. Wandering monster check. Again, it's a level 4. And a 6-headed hydra charges them. Initiative 6-4. It injures Quinn and Edgar with 3 of its strikes before they can fully turn. In return, Quinn injures one head, and Edgar and Prier each kill one. Katya heals Edgar. The next round, the party wins 2-1. Only Prier hits, killing another head. Quinn is hit and goes down. Exactly 0 HP. The party and Hydra then strike simultaneously, 5-5. Katya heals Quinn and pulls him back as Gus maneuvers up front. Only Harl gets a hit. Edgar is wounded again. The party shuffling gives the Hydra an opening, winning initiative 6-1, but it snaps ineffectively. Gus misses, but Edgar and Prier each kill a head. The creature strikes like the wounded animal it is, but to no avail, and all 3 men combine to lop off the last head. The party takes a rest. Gus heals Edgar. With the elevator down, they use Katya's flying broom to get back across the elevator shaft. Some of their troops take Quinn back to the upper level. The party decides to take one of the passages south from the room where they met the Grimlocks. They choose the east hall. After 30 feet, it ends at a door. Gus is unable to force it, but Vegmar succeeds. The party enters a 10-foot north-south by 20-foot room with another door to the south in the southwest corner. In searching, they find a secret door to the east that leads back to the room that they encountered the first group of bandits in on this level. They find several sacks as well. When they open them, 4 giant centipedes crawl out. Harl, getting 3 surprise rounds because he's a ranger, kills 3 of them, and Bernie kills the last on party initiative, winning initiative 6-1. In the sacks, they find gold and jewelry. The party rests and elects to spike the remaining doors shut and return to the previous room to explore the other 2 halls. They take the middle hall and find that it and the other hall converge into a trapezoidal chamber 20 feet wide, with the east wall 60 feet long and the west wall 40 foot long. In this room, the party finds 25 kobolds with 2 guards and a leader. Party wins initiative, and Edgar, who speaks kobold, attempts to convince them to leave peacefully. His charisma counters the difference in alignment, and the kobolds respond enthusiastically, 93% reaction roll. The leader offers to accompany the party to help with other kobolds. The party decides to let him stay until the end of the delve. The rest of the kobolds are escorted to be away to be led out of the keep. The party decides to return north and east back to the last unexplored hall at the 4-way intersection, which goes north. The passage goes north, then east, and ends with a door to the north. Bernie listens and checks for traps, and Gus forces the door. The room beyond is 30 feet east-west by 20 feet. The door opens in the middle of the south wall, with additional doors directly ahead. On the west side of the northwest corner, and on the north side of the northeast corner. and I believe I said that with a weird inflection. It's 3 additional doors, one directly ahead, one on the west side in the northwest corner, and one on the north side in the northeast corner. A group of Grimlocks are gathered in this room: 10 warriors, another leader, and 2 larger champions, along with equal numbers of females and children. The children run off to the west as the Grimlocks, winning initiative 5-4. Reaction 36%, 55% negative. Huddle back toward the northeast corner, protecting the door to the west and the middle north door. As they brandish their bastard swords held by the warriors and 2-handed swords held by the champions, the leader moves to a pair of kettle drums in that corner. The kobold lets Edgar know the kobolds have had dealings with these creatures and that they speak the kobold tongue. Edgar pushes forward and attempts to explain they can have safe passage out but must leave. Edgar's charisma bonus and the alignment difference cancel out to modify the 55% negative to 55% positive. The roll is 68, but the Grimlocks tense up as if to strike. Initiative is tied at 3. The leader begins pounding the drums as the party surges forward. The drums of panic resound, but the party is kept safe from its effects by Gus's protection from fear aura. Katya's arrows streak toward the leader. One misses and the other strikes home. Gus and Vegmar each inflict wounds on the 2 champions. Edgar also gets a hit on a Grimlock. The Grimlocks up front all miss. Prier hustles up front, but his sword swings wide. The party wins initiative 6-2. Gus's sword clangs off the champion's armor. Vegmar's axe cleaves deep into the champion he faces. The rest of the party whiffs. Katya is unable to work her way into the tight corner. Grimlocks score hits on Bernie and Edgar. The party wins initiative again, 6-4. Bernie one-shots the Grimlock that injured him, and Edgar finishes off his opponent. Michael finishes off his opponent as well. The rest of the party strikes to no avail. Katya heals Edgar. 2 of the remaining Grimlocks plug the holes in the line, but the party faces no damage. The Grimlocks win initiative 6-1. Harl and Vegmar take hits. Bernie kills another Grimlock. Michael kills his opponent as well. Harl injures the Grimlock he duels with. Katya heals Bernie. The party wins initiative again, 5-2. Bernie, Edgar, Prier, and Michael each wound a Grimlock. Katya heals Edgar again. The Grimlocks pass a morale check. Edgar is injured again, and Prier goes down. Grimlocks win initiative 6-4. Gus and Vegmar are injured by the champions. The Grimlock that downed Prier attacks Katya. The leader leaves the drums, but none of the regular Grimlocks inflict any damage. Vegmar downs a champion. Katya wounds her assailant. Edgar and Harl each kill theirs. The party wins initiative 6-1. Vegmar injures the leader. Michael seriously injures the Grimlock he is fighting, and Edgar and Harl combine to kill a Grimlock. The Grimlocks fail morale and surrender. Gus rushes to Prier and uses his spells and lay on hands to remove him from death's door. As the soldiers help tie up the captured Grimlocks, Edgar and the Kobold leader question the Grimlocks, seeking information on who and what is in the rooms and through the doors around this one. The Grimlocks are reluctant to discuss the door through which their families ran, but freely offer that the door in the middle room to the north holds treasure, while the other north door leads deeper into the level where more groups of Grimlocks lurk. They also admit to seeing groups of kobolds and dwarves throughout the level, but they state all the groups move about to avoid being vulnerable to one another. This starts a heated discussion among the party. Prier obviously needs to go back to their quarters to recover, and the party's healing abilities are mostly tapped out. Vegmar strongly advocates to find the rest of his kin. Gus feels obligated to continue as well, and Edgar agrees, wanting to have reunited all the dwarves before he takes his leave of the group. Harl, already committed to taking Sven to the king's town at the fort, feels a similar time pressure to finish this mission. Michael is willing to continue for the day, but plainly states his intention to help care for his friend Prier during his convalescence. Bernie and Katya seem to be testing both positions. Ultimately, the group decides to continue on, but with Harl escorting the party troops with Prier and the Grimlock back to the party's base. Harl hands off his spear to Katya so she can fight from the back rank. And we will end the tale of this part of the expedition for now. The opening theme of this podcast was Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. If you have any thoughts or feedback, you can get in touch with me by leaving me a voicemail on my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. That's 864-209-1441. Or through SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/Phantom Thoughts. That's www.speakpipe.com/Phantom Thoughts. Or you can send me a message or an audio file on Discord, where I can be found the Pink Phantom, or through email, phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. That's phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. I don't have to play or read your feedback on the podcast if that is not your preference. Just let me know.